Sorry about that. I had to take a little break there where the dog decided to launch after a rabbit. But anyway, the people who go through the near-death paradigm, or that satori that near-death encompasses, their entire, the pillars of their reality are rocked, and some of them have to be torn down and rebuilt. And in that process, it takes time. The last data I read was it takes about 7, maybe 8 years on average. And there's some folks, like I said, they hit the ground running, and there's other people that will never accommodate to what happened. And their traditional place in society is gone. They just will never return to it. But the thing that they all have in common, whether you're, loaded for bear or you take time to figure it out, everyone is trying to find a way to make the Earth experience a better experience for mankind. Now, because of all of my other predilections, I view Earth as a cabinet full of petri dishes, and just as a lab can have 15, 20, 60 experiments going on at the same time, a single experiment could be represented by a petri dish. And Earth has got dozens and dozens of experiments, programs, subroutines, whatever vernacular you're comfortable with. But basically, my near-death communication was, it's a playground. Go play. And it seems kind of flip to get that kind of message. But maybe if you think about your soul is permanently aware and is infinite in its capability and duration, then the body you're walking around with is extremely temporary. I think that what the message was saying is that don't lose yourself in the part. Don't get so hung up on the rules and regulations. I mean, if someone cuts you off in traffic, you may say, go suck a bag of dicks. But at the same time, let it go. It's done, it's over with. It's a subroutine. It's a catalyst. It's a off-ramp. And if you want to, go that route and, okay, I'm going to chase this person, I'm going to get in front of them, they're going to get in front of me, we're going to, pop our brakes a few times and flip each other the bird and whatever. It's not life, it's a subroutine. And you can choose to participate in that or not. And it's like if you're playing a video game, it's like, do you want a side challenge or do you want to stick with the main? Or a positive thing, same thing, out driving around, you go to a stoplight and there's somebody sitting there that, has a sign, saying about, how they need help for whatever reason. You could choose to engage or not engage. They wave at you, wave back. You decide whether you want to give them $1 or not. Some people I look at and it's like, I nod, like, hey, I see you as a human being. I'm not rolling down my window. Other people, I will, go through a drive-through and get them something to eat. Stick some money in the bag and loop around back and hand them the bag. You can choose to participate on so many different subroutines and so many different plans and projects. And I think what's happened is that people in general have lost themselves in the part. Life is a comic opera, and our time on the stage is very limited. And so what words you have, what lines you have, even if you're ad-libbing them, they have power, and you can choose to invest in that moment or divest in that moment. And not every moment is, life changing, but they can be. So one of the mental chew toys I have is that people who have a near-death experience have this, I don't know if compulsion or obsession is the right word. Because if you compel someone to do something, I almost feel like that you are encouraging them to act against their natural inclinations, or you're having to change their mind about something, to compel someone. Whereas obsession is more, I'm going to do this thing no matter what it cost, and to whatever end, like almost leads to a Pyrrhic victory. I know I'm splitting semantics here. I'm going too far down the rabbit hole. Basically what I'm looking at is, if in 2015 there was a Pew Research questionnaire or survey, and 10 million Americans had said that they had a near-death experience. So I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed when it comes to math, but we'll just, for argument's sake, that was 15, add 5 years to make it close to 21, because I'm lazy and not going to do the math. But 10 million people over 5 years, that's 50 million people. If we have 350 million people here, that's 1/7 of the population. Yeah. I need more coffee. It's about 5 o'clock in the morning here, so that's why maybe I'm still a little punchy. I just find that late at night and early in the morning, when the world is still sleeping, I have more clarity of thought. So we have 10 million people a year over 5 years. That's 50 million people. 50 million people, 5 people in a room of 350 people. You may be outnumbered. But hold on to that. So 350 by 5. Now, you would think 350 people in a room and only 5 are trying to change their minds. If those 5 are interdispersed throughout the crowd, maybe trying to get something to happen, not so much. But if all 5 of them happen to belong to a band, then maybe you can get the 350 people to buy into your reality, at least temporarily. At least that's what a concert is, in my opinion. Musicians are magicians. That's another thought. So the 350 and 5, hold on to that. Now, there have been some studies that started with the Transcendental Meditation movement in the United States in the early 70s. And I'll spare you all the background, but if you look up TM studies and look up crime rates and weather, in the summer, in the 70s, not a lot of places. I mean, there were a lot more homes in the 70s that had no air conditioning than we have now. As a consequence of these extreme heat, people became more volatile, and so there is an association between temperature and crime. And so this experiment was done, I think, both in Philly as well as in DC, that a group of people got together and meditated and tried to keep everybody, happy, happy, joy, joy. And it worked. It worked. Another group that did this was the Silva Mind Method. I think it's just now Silva Method. But yeah, Jose Silva has some pretty cool ideas for a TV repairman out of Mexico. But yeah, Jose Silva and Dr. George DeSalle, who was the, I think PhD, MD, PhD, or PhD. I'm sorry, George, I don't remember. But anyway, they meditated, tried to get people to be more calm during the heat wave. And, on a curve, when there's a corollary, they, pretty much track with each other. But not only was there a diversion in the curve, but it went the opposite direction. I mean, I don't know what the sigma value was, but it was significantly different. So the other thing that was interesting about that was that once the experiment was over and the people stopped meditating, it still had a lasting effect. And so, I mean, it was almost like the physical equivalent of exercise. Once you got moving, that's the hard part. But then after you stop moving, all the other systems are still running at that previous peak. And so it's like, you can be, sitting there eating your, peanut butter and celery and you're still burning calories. Same thing with these folks. After the meditation was done and, all went home and whatever, the shift in temperature would have correlated to a raise in violence, and it didn't happen. It didn't happen that summer at all. So there was a couple studies along that tangent, and the intention, we'll call it intention, made a difference. Fast forward to, I think, around 2000, 2005, somewhere in there. Lynn McTaggart wrote a book called The Intention Experiment. And it was, had several different folks in there that were running different experiments. But again, it was about setting an intention and then having things happen that correlated to the intention being set. What all of these, and I want to mention one more person. So inside the book, The Intention Experiment, was an experiment that was run by Dr. Dean Radin, who is now out at IONS, IONS. And if I would highly, highly recommend reading The Intention Experiment, The Power of Eight, and Entangled Minds. And that's from Lynn, and Dr. Dean. What this all comes down to is that when you get roughly 1% of a group to focus their intention that intention tends to manifest. Lynn went a little further with that, and so her most recent book, The Power of Eight, is that if you can get 8 people together to focus their intention, you can make shit happen. One of the benefits of living in Durham, North Carolina is having the Ryan Research Center right here, and there's been other experiments on that tangent, but again, setting the experiment or setting the intention can make things manifest. So if you have a population of 350 million, then it should take 3.5 million people to be able to turn. And if we're having 10 million people, 10 million Americans a year for the past 5 years, that's way more than 1%. So does it only happen in a microenvironment? As you grow those numbers, do you require more? Or is it because there's a lack of focus? And I think that's got as much relative possibility as anything else, because we all get caught up in the comic opera. And that's how we get manipulated. My sports team is better than your sports team. My vehicle is more than yours. My house, my paycheck, my clothing. And I think the one thing, I'm sure there's more than one, but the one thing that keeps coming back to me from the COVID situation is that people have been rattled enough to be woke, with air quotes. And in this state of being awake before they go back to sleep again, I think maybe they need to be reminded of some things. Reminded of some of those mental chew toys. You're a meat suit, baby. You're a meat suit. It's all temporary. It's all an experiment. You can choose which ride you want. Some of them will make you puke. Some of them will scare you. And if you've ever done something that scares you, you know that on the other side of it, you've never felt more alive. So, the mental chew toy I have is that if we have so many people on the planet who have had this experience, why does it seem to get worse instead of better? And I'm not sure if it's because of a lack of focused intent, or if because we're going from a micro to a macro environment that the variables have changed, or just because there's more variables and more subroutines. Or if that's even more interesting, I wonder if there's actually a system in place that is counteracting. So all the conspiracy theorists are sitting there with their popcorn. Yeah, tell me, what is The Illuminati and the New World Order have gotten together to create a subroutine to make sure that Earth stays a peculiar, odd, strange place, so that our experiments can continue on humankind. Bum bum bum. Look, another way I look at this, or what I talk to other people about this, the Earth is a holodeck, and you make up your own reality. If you want a new world order, you got one. If you want to make it, Mary Poppins, then it is. If you want the comic opera, you got the comic opera. And then there's other people out there who, like game makers, are like, okay, I'm going to create a subroutine that has enough endorphin trips to keep you engaged. Look at how Las Vegas casinos are designed. No windows. You don't know what time it is. There's no clocks on the wall. Very bright and colorful and cheery noises, and the Pavlovian responses of bells going off, and the tinkle of coins and change going into the little hoppers at the bottom. So that was my mental choose toy this morning, was if all these people are having all of these things that are overwriting their original software and giving him another OS, in my opinion, I'm going to call it obstinate spirituality, because you have this spiritual nature now that's on board, and it's obstinate because a lot of the subroutines and systems in place here for control are grounded in materialism. And when they create a maze for you to run through, and you decide that I'm just going to jump on top of the maze and go from point A to B instead of through the maze, I'll just walk across to the top of it. It doesn't work well for the experiment. Sometimes it doesn't work out well for the mouse. That's my next mental chew toy, I think, is that, so what do we do? What do we do to activate those people and get them to come out? Come out, wherever you are. Yeah, I'm going to chew on that. I think I might be onto something here. But anyway, the sun's starting to come up. The regular workday is about to begin, so I'm going to go back to that subroutine now. Keeps the animals fed and daddy fed, and a roof over his head, and coffee in his mouth. Trust me, you want me with coffee. You don't want me without coffee. Coffee is not a beverage. It's really a social lubricant. The first one is a public service. After that, it's a beverage, but until then, it's a public service. So anyway, pick your subroutines wisely. Enjoy them while you're in them. Remember, it's all temporary. It's an amusement park. Enjoy the ride. Have a good day. Bye.